through the roof. If you've got $1, put it on Arch, okay? Now, we talked about him a little bit. The reason why I want to bring him back up is because obviously it's a fun topic. It's just exciting to see. This guy is doing a great job of the publicity and promoting himself. It's not really him. I think it's just his camp and then just us. We're just, it's a Manning, right? So, I mean, it pushes itself for one. But AR is more likely going to be leaving Florida, right? And we talked last week of where is he going to go and does Florida have a chance? And I was kind of leaning probably not so. But when I took a step back and I've been watching some things, reading some things, with AR leaving, and remember we talked about what are the reasons why Arch would go anywhere, right? The money we considered a wash. So it's going to be, can I play, right? Are you going to be able to develop me to be a great player too, right? And what was the third major one? The legacy, okay? Right? Those are the three main things that we felt that if you're Arch, that's what you want to go do, okay? AR leaves, it's his for the taking because, Jack has made a little bit of a push and he came out, I read an article today where he's like, look, I still believe he can be the guy. Love the attitude kid. Anyways, so to me, it's like if Arch comes in, that's Arch, that's Arch's, right? The legacy, duh. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? And then if Billy proves to do really well for Arch, well, then you got the three things that we talked about. So it's not as crazy, I think, as it once was to believe. Now, we had Connor on here. He said he was a little overrated. We've talked about, is he overrated? And I still think he might be a little bit. Again, it's hard to tell with these kids. So it's kind of a mute conversation to me. It's a mute point with, hey, are they overrated or they're not overrated? Because it's too soon to really tell. The kid's got Manning blood, so we'll always be excited for that. But he's set to visit the Swamp in June. And that, to me, is huge, right? That's later on in the recruiting stages, which is good. I think that's a little bit, right? We got him later on. I think we had him early. It almost was like, I'm just going to go just say, hey, and I'm out. But if we're getting closer to signing day, which is still not very close, but it's closer, right? Then I think the original visiting day, I think, was looking more of March and April, is huge. Now, I don't know how much Billy and all those guys, I know we've been visiting him a little bit. But look, I think Arch being a Gator, it's not as crazy as I think as it once was. I think the Manning might have a little bit to say about that, the Peyton, but what do you got, Steve?
Look, I mean, if there's one kid that needs the money less going into recruiting than anybody else named Johnny Manziel, it's Arch Manning. So money is a scratch. Johnny Manziel came from oil money, and I want to say he was richer. His family was richer than the Manning family going in. So money is a scratch. To your point, legacy. I mean, man, legacy, going into Florida, being a legacy quarterback, you're asking to be the next Spurrier, Warfel, Tebow.
Sure.
Like if you look at his family, his dad went to Ole Miss. There was no legacy quarterback. His uncle went to Tennessee. There really was no legacy quarterback there.
Before you're saying before Peyton, right?
Before Peyton, right?
Sure.
So if you want to be a legacy quarterback, maybe Florida's not the spot. Texas,
okay. Texas
seems it. It's got the money, it's got the notoriety, it's got the ability to continue.
Because what I mean, they had, but Texas had Colt McCoy and Vince Young.
That's not. You're not talking legacy. You're talking about individual years of performance.
Those two guys, I feel like those two guys for Texas were, in my opinion, were a legacy for Texas. I mean, Colt
McCoy didn't win a national championship.
Yeah,
Vince Young didn't fade it out in a heartbeat. I don't know. I just feel like that's a place where you could literally go and be look, think about this. If you flip the script, go to Oklahoma, try to be a legacy quarterback at Oklahoma with, Bradford, with Kyler Murray, with Baker Mayfield, right? And those are all relatively new.
But Baker didn't win a title either. And you just considered him.
Baker Mayfield didn't win a title? I'd be surprised. Well, you could be right, but I guess it's just the name legacy
that's what I'm saying. Like, if Vince Young and Colt McCoy have a name legacy, like if you think like they're comparing Quinn Ewers to Colt McCoy is a legacy in Texas. That's what I'm saying. But I like your argument. I think I agree with what you're saying. LSU has Joe Burrow, so I mean, but Texas, I would say out of the ones we just mentioned has the weakest of legacies. Honestly, Georgia, outside of Matt Stafford, Betson is not a legacy yet. Stetson. No. But
Yeah, you stat, and then that's about it.
That's about all you got right there.
Yep. I
So,
mean, so hey, look, there's possibility there. Again, look, this kid, like I said,
but
you know,
what I mean by legacy though, it's his legacy, right? I feel like if you, I guess no, I don't know. I think you're right. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying on this one. I think like you're right because there is a bunch.
it's difficult. It's a little look. We're not going to know until the kid makes the decision. But I mean, we're just talking about if this kid wants to go in and just put a brand on the school. Which school is
Can he
easily
make
branded?
his? That's okay. So if it's hey, can I go and make this my school? Like when you think of Tennessee, you think of Peyton Manning. When you think of Florida, you think of Spurrier and Tebow. The
Tebow,
recents
right.
more Tebow, right?
Oracle, yeah,
Right.
sure.
You think of Florida State, you think of Jameis.
Yeah, Charlie Ward.
But you could think of also to me honestly Dalvin Cook like that. They got a few more guys I feel like have kind of set the tone a little bit.
Yeah.
LSU Joey Burrow right now for sure, but
hot, yeah.
it's too hot. Oklahoma definitely a Sam Bradford, a Baker Mayfield. Texas, you're right. I wouldn't like. We kind of had to reach for the Vince. We had to reach
weird.
for the
For a
the
school
Vince
that
and Cole.
good, they haven't had the guy that just went out there and just and you were scared of.
Yeah,
Right,
like
even with the Oklahoma game this year, like Texas was up, and then Oklahoma comes. It's just Texas needs a marquee quarterback because that school is so marketable. If you give them a marquee quarterback, oh, we're going to be so sick of it in a heartbeat. Trust me.
So the other thing I think too to keep in mind, like let's say because the legacy we're kind of going back and forth. I think we're kind of now we're weighing out a legacy. If we scratch that, right, it comes more down to where can I play and who can develop me the best, right? And now that pulls Texas and Florida and LSU as the three runners. If those are the two things that Arch is looking for, right? Florida is definitely now a heavy hand, and now it's going to be who can develop me, right? Because those three schools are going to, or I say a tie, right, for the most part. And now it's going to be who can develop me. And to me, that's going to be LSU and Florida 1-2 and Texas because Texas hasn't produced any, like we said, they didn't have anybody from the draft last year, right? Brian Kelly, he has a good track record. Billy is too new, so that's why this year is huge for Billy Napier. So, look, it's not as – look, and we said LSU was kind of my
Sarkisian in Texas is no pushover.
But so he doesn't have – so maybe he's in the same boat as Billy of like, look, he hasn't in the position he is, he hasn't proven, right? And neither has Brian at LSU. So all three of those schools haven't really proven themselves as like, hey, we can produce somebody for you. So Georgia kind of makes a play again because, look, he could be the guy to play now, and Kirby has proven to make some studs. So Georgia might be back in the argument.